talk about life and love and information. Let's talk about life and let's talk about love.
Hey, good morning. This is Velvely Harity. We're broadcasting from beautiful St. Petersburg, Florida. It's just a terrific day today. A lot of people are out and about. It's hot, but that's what beaches are for. So a lot of people are on the beach. The streets are a little bit empty, actually. But here we are. We're on the 5th show in the doggy series, For the Love of Dogs. So I want to talk to you a little bit more about that in a minute. Okay, so here we are, and we're going to be talking about For the Love of Dogs. This particular show is about dogs and spirituality, or some of the elevated nature of one of us we all can have with our pets. That it has a transcendent quality to it. And I was talking to a dear friend of mine who's here today, and she started telling me a story about her and her dogs, and I thought, wait a minute, you need to be on the show. And that's how this happened, because she was going to tell this great story, but I wanted everybody to hear it. I want to thank Joe over at UPS 2nd and 2nd South for being the sponsor of the series, for the whole show, actually, For the Love of Dogs, and for every other show, since I've been my own producer. So I'm very pleased that Joe is on board. UPS 2nd, we all know where it is. And everybody goes there, and they do their stuff there, their shipping, their mailboxes, wrapping. You can even buy very cool cards there. You can send faxes. You can do whatever your little heart desires. And now they're open on Sunday. So you can even do it on Sunday, and that's pretty cool. So thank you, Joel, and Don, for sponsoring my show. And by the way, the theme song is Neil Van Erd from New York. And I want to mention this because years ago, when I was told that I could not use Louis Armstrong's It's a Wonderful Life anymore, I was just crushed. That was my theme song. I just loved it. I thought it fit perfectly with the show. So I went out on a quest, a Facebook quest, I call it. There's a lot of Facebook quests out there, but this particular one was for an original song, one that I didn't have to worry about. And quite a few people responded, but the response from Neil I took seriously because he had a lot of credentials, and he knew what he was doing, and he was a songwriter and a drummer and a musician, and he knows all about music. And he originally was from Plant City, so there was that little tangle too. So I contacted him, and about, 6 months or so later, we finally got a song that we're both very, very happy with. So thank you, Neil. Thank you for Let's Talk Life, Let's Talk Love. It's all about life and love. It's just a wonderful lyric. So I wanted to thank that. So dogs. We all love them. This city is famous for being doggy-friendly. There's more dogs on the street sometimes than people. I mean, you can't go to a cafe without sitting down and having a doggy sitting around somewhere in the cafe, outside, of course. I had my little doggy, Miss Nina, for 12 years, and we prowled the city at night. We were the night team. And that's when I started writing about night walks with Miss Nina, because we saw things at night that most people didn't see during the day. And then all the neighbors and all the friends I made through Nina. She was my little icebreaker, I called her. And she wasn't actually that friendly as a dog. I mean, she didn't go up to people and get all excited to meet them. She was very cool. She had a very cool quality about her. And the only thing that excited her was male dogs that weren't neutered, my little harlot, and squirrels. Those two, she didn't even care if birds sat on her nose. So that was her only two triggers. So anyway, all of us love our dogs. Dogs mean certainly many things to many people. We're going to hear a story today that I thought was very compelling. The series started with Anna Cook from the New Barker magazine. And then I did an hour on Miss Nina. And then we had the doggy dads. And then I did something on doggy parks. And now we're going to do something called Dogs and Spirituality. So I'm going to take a little break. And when I come back, I'm going to introduce you to Aimee Alexander. And you're going to hear her story, and we're going to have a conversation. So I'll be right back, okay? I think I'll be right back. I got a temperamental program here. Okay, we're back. Thank you for giving us a little bit of a break. Anyway, Aimee and I met at the Pier Art Show, and it was called Sitting Pretty, and I think it was back in
2012.
12? Get out of here.
Yeah, May 2012.
Okay. We need Aimee to speak up.
Yes, we met in May of 2012, and Velva and I, Velva had been in charge of selecting the photos for my first photo exhibit as part of the group called Sitting Pretty.
Sitting Pretty. Art about the pier, and not just photography. There was all mediums were represented.
Yes.
So, and I talked her in because she had this wonderful image, and I saw it. And I called her. I said, "You've got to be in this show." And she hadn't ever been in a show.
Yes, it
right?
was a thrill for me. It was my very first time having art, my photos in a photography show. So I was very proud and very honored.
And it sold.
It did.
It did. It sold.
Very excited.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I would have been too. Okay, now, so Aimee, let's talk about dogs, and let's talk about, thank you for the refresher on where we met. I know it was the show, but I didn't think it was that long ago.
Yeah, time's gone fast.
Wow, just a big wow. But now that we're talking about the show, I could say it was, 90 pieces of art by 70 artists, or
Yes.
is it something?
It
was
pretty
huge.
close to it, yes.
It took the whole third floor of the old pier. So here we are. And let's talk about, I want you to give everybody the same background so everybody can know you, about who you are, your family, your kids, the dogs you had as a child. And then we'll go right into the spiritual aspects of doggy ownership, okay?
Okay. So I am a parent to two teenagers, and they're both high school students. My daughter's a senior. She's going to be a senior in high school this year, and my son's going to be a freshman. And I've been a single parent for about 6 years. And I currently am working as a freelance writer, and in the past I've been a journalist and photographer. So I have the creative need to produce photos. It brings me so much joy. But going back to dogs, growing up, I was actually very afraid of dogs. And I was bitten by a dog in a store that was kind of like a Home Depot store. And I'd always sort of had a negative experience.
How old were you?
I was probably about 6 years old, first grade.
Where were you bit?
On my hand.
Oh, okay.
So ever since then, I was always a little bit scared of dogs.
Sure.
And as a family, we'd always had cats. We always had a few cats as family pets. So I always had a cat around. So when fast forward to being a family and having children, my daughter and son had been asking for a dog, a family dog, for a very long time. And we wanted to wait until we were living in a house and had a backyard and could provide the right environment. So when the time came to pick out a family dog, my daughter was 8 years old and my son was 5, and we went to the SPCA, and it was also going to be my first experience having a dog. So not only would it be my children's first dog, but it would also be my own dog. So we came and went back into the area where all the dogs were.
Now, which SPCA was this?
This one is up in Largo.
The one by Walshingham?
Yes.
Near there?
Yes.
I know it is. Okay.
Yes. So it was Sunday afternoon, and for some reason they had a lot of puppies, and I guess they don't normally get puppies. And my husband at the time was with my daughter, and they saw little Baiey, who was a lab mix, and Baiey just seemed like the right fit for us. We took her out, and they let you go into this petting area to sort of experience the dog and see if it's a right fit for you personality-wise. And I mean, we fell in love with her right away. She was snuggly and sweet, and so we decided, all right, this is our dog. And so we brought Baiey home, and
what color was she?
Baiey was like a rusty orange color. She was a golden lab mix.
Okay.
So she had really big paws and a big black nose, and she was just so sweet.
Now, I'm always curious about why people name their dogs what they do. So tell us about the name Baiey.
So in our family, we have a tradition where we watch It's a Wonderful Life, the movie, and George Baiey.
Speak up.
George Baiey was the character in there, and we just loved him. So that was part influence was naming Baiey, which is a girl dog, after George Baiey. And then there was another TV show that I can't remember the name of it right at this very second, but there was a character that my kids really liked, and her name was Baiey. So we just all agreed, like, that was the perfect name for her.
That is the perfect name with that history. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
no wonder there's a spiritual element to that dog, huh?
Yeah. So so I learned how to potty train. I mean, I'd never had any of that experience with the dog, training the dog, walking the dog, all these things. And I was used to cats, being very independent. And the dog would follow me everywhere. And at the time, I'd said to my husband, my ex-husband now, why is the dog following me everywhere? And he said, well, that's what dogs do. So I got very comfortable with that presence. And I just, every time I was working on a project or at the computer, or I'd come out of the bathroom, the dog would just be waiting for me. And I just really loved that presence. I was always just very aware of that calming presence. And that
was
love.
It calming?
Yes, Baiey was, she was a puppy, and she went through a couple years of kind of crazy chewing tendencies. She chewed through a leather couch. She ate a hammock. She ate some metal patio chairs. I mean, she was teething pretty heavy, so we did have some stuff that we had to get rid of, but it was kind of funny at the same time. But Baiey was a family member, and we just loved her and took her with us everywhere. And for her first birthday party, we went downtown to the dog park, and we put a little hat on her, and we made doggy bags and gave them out to whoever was at the dog park.
Did you?
We did. We put her in a pink tutu. I mean, we went all out.
Yeah. Now, how big was she at this point?
At this point, she was probably about 50 pounds. At her heaviest, she was about 80 pounds.
Wow.
And then, we put her on some new dog food because towards the end of her life, she was very sick. And she kind of trimmed down to about 65.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Good, yeah.
Yeah. So Baiey was very comforting to my daughter and to my son, both of them in special ways. But we had a few incidents with bullying, and Baiey would just be like the salve to my child's wound, you know. Every night, just if she was having a tough day, Baiey just seemed to instinctually know, and she would just cuddle up next to her or lay down with her, and you know, she just had a way about her that she was almost like Nanny and Peter Pan.
So is this the spiritual aspect you were referring to?
I think so. I think she had a very healing, intuitive way about her that, you know, she just knew when someone was hurting or feeling low or just needed a little boost. And same with my son, you know, he got hurt at camp, and we had to take him to the emergency room to get some stitches. We had to take him to the emergency room to get stitches. And, you know, as soon as we came back, she was just right there by his side, just wouldn't leave him. And she just opened my eyes to how
meaningful
that relationship is with a dog, and how the love a dog gives you is unconditional. And I never knew that about dogs. I'd heard it, but I'd never really experienced it.
She sounds like she was, I was thinking of doing a series called Nanny Dogs, where the dog is, you know, got inspired by my son, Michael, who, when his wife, Allison, was pregnant, he decided to get a dog before the baby was born. Mm-hmm. And they looked all over, and they found Sarah, I think her name is gone. Sorry, Michael. I think it's Sarah. It is Sarah. Is it Sarah? Anyway, it's a fabulous dog, but it was some sort of blend of a lab.
Right.
It's a big dog. But she is like this fierce guardian.
Right.
You know, and I thought, wow, she's sort of like the nanny.
Right.
She sits next to the baby. The baby makes a sound. She looks up to see if everything is okay. You know, she's right there.
Right.
You know, so was Baiey that way?
I felt like Baiey was very similar. And when I went through hard times myself, I felt like she was very healing, her presence. I felt that when you go through a divorce, you have to, you know, move out and move away with your kids, and sometimes you worry about feeling safe as a woman living on your own. And I always felt safe with her. I always felt that she would protect me, and she was a sweet dog. She would never harm anybody, but any time that she seemed to feel threatened or was suspicious of anyone, she would always jump to attention. So,
well, she sounds remarkable. And how long was Baiey in your life?
Baiey, we celebrated her birthday, her 9th birthday, last November. So she lived to be a little bit over 9 years old. And she was diagnosed with chronic kidney failure around the time she was 7.5. So
did you have any idea?
We took her in to the vet, and they ran some blood work. We were seeing a new vet, and they just decided to start from scratch. And she had elevated levels in her kidneys. So we just kept an eye on it, and we managed it for almost 2 years. And then towards the end of her life, it escalated really quickly. And maybe within a week.
Listen, for my listening audience, talk about what are some of the symptoms and what can people pay attention to?
A big indicator for us with Baiey was she was thirsty all the time, and she was ravenously hungry. And we didn't realize it, but that that's a big indicator that your dog might have a kidney problem. Also, trouble urinating, which she didn't really seem to have that, but sometimes we would take her out to go use the restroom, and maybe she'd go or maybe she wouldn't. So it was a little bit, that was a big, indicator for us as well.
So she wasn't having accidents all over?
No, she wasn't.
Just the opposite?
Right.
Okay. Well, that's a shame.
Yeah, it was tough, and we kind of knew it was coming, but we did everything that we could for a couple of years. We put her on a special prescription dog food. We had regular testing done, and she was doing okay with that plan. And I'm glad that we were able to find out a couple of years ago what to keep an eye on instead of too late, because from what I read about people who have to deal with their dogs with this, sometimes it comes on quickly and you have no idea that that's what would cause your dog to die. So,
well, that's a good point. I think we should let the listener experience something that I experienced. Miss Nina had very few symptoms, if any, and she was dead 4 hours after her first obvious symptom.
Right.
Now, there were some minor symptoms. For example, about 2 weeks before, I had a bad cold, and she seemed to have some labored breathing.
Right.
But I thought, well, she's got my cold. And another thing that a couple of people have told me, my daughter in Chicago is a vet tech, and she said, animals are very good at hiding their symptoms.
Right.
They don't let anyone know how they are because that's a survival technique for them. So one day I saw Miss Nina abdominally breathing. I said, oh my God, she's got my cold. Meanwhile, she ate. We went out. I mean,
right.
Life went on.
Going through the motions.
Yeah.
Right.
And then one night, and I want you to tell your story next. One night I heard this funny noise coming out of her. And I thought, what the hell is that?
Right.
And I looked over, and she was clearly distressed. This was about 5 in the morning, 4 maybe. So I called the ER vet on 22nd, the 24-hour one. And he said, well, your vet is going to be open at 7. If you can, it might be smarter for you to just keep her comfortable and then go to your vet at 7. Because by the time I see her, I couldn't give you any answers in 2 hours anyway.
Right.
So I said, thank you, but if I have to, can I come in? And he said, absolutely. So I sat with Miss Nina. She didn't want to be held. She wanted to be unencumbered. In some ways, it must have experienced her trouble breathing as something that being surrounded, she didn't want to be around like a pillow. She wanted sort of be completely free of stuff, right, including being held. So I talked to her. She sat there, and I talked to her, and suddenly it was about time to go. And then I thought, well, maybe I'll take her for a car ride because she loves the car. So I left about, half an hour early so I could drive her around. And it was night, it was dark, and she loved night. But by 8 o'clock, by the time we got to the vet, her abdominal breathing went to her chest, and then it went up high. She was panting.
Right.
So I ran into the back room, and I said, my dog is dying. I ran right in, and, right in where you're not supposed to go. And they immediately put her in an oxygen tent. But the truth of the matter was that that's where she would have to stay. She could not lead any kind of normal life. She was 14. And I know that, each dog has a sort of lifespan. But I kind of thought Nina would be around till maybe 16, right, something like that. And it sounds like Baiey, of course, should have lived longer.
Yeah.
So talk about some of the symptoms that you noticed. You talked about increased...
Yes, increased thirst and appetite. We were always on the lookout just to make sure that, what the difference was between normal and not normal.
Did she sleep more?
She started sleeping a lot. Her it started with her, a big drop in her energy level. She was just napping a lot, but she'd always get up to greet us at the front door, you know. You could tell it took her a little bit longer to get up, but she'd always get up.
Right.
And every single time, without fail. And so she was lethargic, and she had thrown up a few times. And I knew deep down that wasn't a normal, you know, I knew it wasn't something that she'd eaten. And then, you know, she was also having some, you know, tummy trouble. So that combination made me feel like this could be serious. So I had taken her in earlier that week. We had a retest for her kidney levels, and they weren't that good. And it was just by consequence that, you know, she was starting to rapidly decline. So the vet already knew that the tests weren't looking that good. So by the time I brought her in there on a Saturday, they told me to, you know, keep an eye on her, and, you know, they gave some extra medication, but it was making her throw up more. It was for some reason it was an anti-nausea medicine, but it was making her more sick. So we decided not to. It was raising her blood pressure. She was also having blood pressure problems, which we didn't know that she had either. Okay. So it was just like a weird combination of like surprise.
Everything starts going wrong at once.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It just felt like everything was going on at once. So I brought her in that morning. We're going to keep an eye on her. And then as the day wore on, she had a lot of shallow breathing. She was panting. She just seemed drained, and later that evening she was just panting really hard, and I stayed up with her all night, and she couldn't really jump on the bed. She was kind of weak, so I put her up on my bed. And the kids and I all came in and laid with her and pet her and just tried to comfort her, because she didn't seem, like you said, she didn't, you know, animals don't show that they're in pain, obviously. It just, you know, but by the looks of it, she seemed like she was kind of struggling. So the next day we brought her to the animal emergency clinic, Pearl, in Clearwater. And they gave her an exam. And obviously the kidney levels are elevated again. And, you know, there were a bunch of different options. And we were trying to, you know, process what was going on with the dog being so physically ill and, you know, what lay ahead. And we didn't really have too much time to make a whole lot of leisurely decisions. So we made it a choice as a family to have her stay there overnight, because she wasn't drinking a lot. They wanted to keep her hydrated.
So she had an IV then?
Yes, she had an IV. And it was really hard to do, because we, you know, aside from maybe a family trip where a friend had, you know, watched Baiey, we really were never away from Baiey. So when we left her there that night, it felt really lonely at home without her.
Oh, I can imagine.
And so we had spoken to the vet, and they wanted to monitor her. They wanted to make sure that she was hydrated enough. And then they had to wait a couple days to do some more testing. And what we were hoping was that the hydration would have kept her kidneys balanced.
Right.
And we were really praying that was going to happen. And after 2 days, it didn't. And she was going downhill pretty quickly. And it was hard.
Did you bring her home then, or what was the decision?
So we kept her there 2 days.
Okay.
Which was really hard. And every day we went to visit her like 3 times. We'd go in the room with her. They'd bring her out she was in like a kennel, kind of sort of an ICU, but in a kennel.
Yeah.
They brought her back, And she'd always start wagging her tail, even though she was so sick. And it was tough to see her just struggling just to wag her tail. And they'd bring her in, and we'd just lay down on the floor with her and just cuddle with her and pet her and talk to her and just try to make her feel like we were there, even though we're not physically there every minute, which was really tough to leave her every night. I didn't want to leave her. And
Did you think that she would somehow survive and come home? What were your thoughts at the time?
Well,
Or did the doctor say, did the doc say, hey, she'll get better?
They weren't sure what was going to happen, but having lost 2 parents before and having seen what their health looks like before they were about to pass away, I could kind of see that it wasn't really going to turn around just because of all of the extreme measures that they were having to take to keep her hydrated and medication and antibiotics and all of these things. I knew by the second day that she was there when we were waiting for a 12-hour period overnight to get the test back to see if she had maybe turned the corner somehow, through a miracle.
So there was a lot of hope involved in this.
There was a lot of hope, and my children were hopeful. But deep down, I kind of felt like it would really have to take a miracle for her to turn around. And I knew that the hydration was, the IV therapy was keeping her alive because she wasn't able to drink a lot. And I knew that, I sensed that if we were going to bring her home, she would probably go pretty quick. And so when the time came to get the test results, I think it was a Monday morning. It was Monday or Tuesday morning. And they called back, and I knew right away that it was bad news when the doctor said, I'm so sorry. And so immediately, it was a school day, I said, we're coming to get her.
Yes.
We're coming to get her. And that night before, when we went to have our last visit with her, it was really hard, Velva. We didn't want to leave her. We wanted to take her home. And she kept coming up to us, out of the cage.
Why didn't you? Do you mind my asking? Your instincts.
I was afraid that she was going to be in too much pain.
Okay.
And I was worried that she was going to suffer. And I felt like having her in an ICU situation at that point was relieving her.
She would be more comfortable.
Yes,
okay.
And they had put her on some pain medication. And I just couldn't bear to see her in so much pain, because at home when she was starting to breathe pretty heavy, that was our main concern and the reason why we took her.
And you're going to listen to this someday, this show, and you're going to hear what I'm hearing, that your instincts are impeccable, that all your instincts were right about this whole experience.
Thank you.
Seriously, every single one of them.
Thank you.
And I just think that, this is a tragedy. She was basically a young dog.
She was.
And I wanted, do you need a moment? Let's take a little break. We'll take a little break. It's okay. We can take breaks. If my computer will let us. Okay, we're back. We took a nice break, took some water, did a little commiserating about our doggies, found out that Baiey and Miss Nina both died in the month of January. So there's a little connection there that way.
Right.
But you were talking about Baiey, and I saw that you got emotional, and I appreciated that, because I would too. It's a very heartbreaking story, that you have to have hope, and then knowing that hope isn't going to do it.
Right.
But hope is a huge, powerful thing. So you apparently you brought Baiey home. Go ahead.
Yes. So I got my children from school, and we went right to the animal emergency hospital. and we waited for them to bring her out. And it was very hard to see at that point because she couldn't walk, and they put like this sort of, I'm not really sure what it is, but she had a nurse on each side of her, and there was like a cloth support where they carried her.
Like a sling of some sort?
Yeah, like a sling that helped her walk, and she still tried to wag her tail, which was, it really was tough to see. But she was still happy to see us. And so they brought her out to the car. We had, pushed down the back seat to make plenty of room. We had her dog bed in the back seat, and then it was about a 20-minute ride home, and the kids were in the back seat comforting her and telling her how much they love her and patting her and just showering her with affection. And so we finally made it home and opened the front door, and we carried her in. We had a discussion before we brought her inside to figure out where should we put her.
Yes.
So we brought her inside. We carried her in on her bed, and we decided to put her on our favorite spot on the couch because she always climbed up in this one little corner on the couch. And so we said, let's put her in her favorite spot. And so she laid there. And they had given her some pain medication. So I was comfortable bringing her home knowing that she was not in pain at that point. But we sort of had to monitor her because we weren't sure if she would go into the night,
Right.
We weren't sure what the time frame was. So we were all just gathered around her in our house on her, she was there with her favorite dog bed, and then the cat came up and was kind of curious what was going on, but I'm sure our cat Coco probably already knew what was happening. But she started breathing a little bit heavier again, and the kids were worried, because it was scary. And I gave them the option, is this something that you feel comfortable being around and seeing and experiencing, or do you want to, maybe it's too traumatic and too, troubling for you to see because, not a lot of children have seen an animal die right before their eyes. So it's
that's
very
a good
worried,
point.
Very worried about that.
What did they say?
They said, Mom, Bailey's been here for us. We're going to be here for Baiey.
Oh, I mean, that's...
Yeah. So,
now I'm getting sad.
Yeah. Which speaks...
God love them,
Yeah. Which speaks to just that love that they shared for the dog.
Well, it speaks to a lot of character, too.
Yeah.
I think. It's easy to run off, but it's tough to stay in the hard times,
Right.
So
it is. It took courage for everyone. Baiey too.
So what was it like at the end?
She was. Her breathing had kind of slowed down. We were all crowded around her. We each took turns looking at her in her face so she would see who was there, petting her, making some kind of eye contact the best we could. But she had started twitching a lot, which was a little bit scary to them. So I had to just kind of explain to them, like, this is just the body's natural process. When it's dying, she's not in pain right now. It's just she's sort of, her brain is sort of signaling, like, certain things she doesn't have control over. And then she passed away about an hour after we brought her home. And she had just was trembling a little bit. And she arched her back a little, which was a little bit scary for them as well. But I, again, had to kind of reassure them that that's okay. She's not in suffering. She's not suffering or in pain. And then everybody just...
Did she just suddenly, then that was it? She just stopped breathing?
Yeah, she just stopped breathing. Her breathing just kind of dissipated very slowly. And we all just pet her, and we were crying, and we were telling her how much that we loved her and what a special dog she was, and how she'll always be the number one, dog in our hearts. And my children dealt with it in different ways. Theo wanted to be right there next to her, and Amber did too, but then she decided she wanted to go back. She went in the backyard. She went outside, and she needed some time in nature in the backyard. And she drew a picture. She was writing in her journal. Each child, it was very interesting to see how they dealt with the passing of a beloved animal. So I just let them kind of be with wherever they needed to be with it.
How about you?
I was crying quite a bit because I was just so overwhelmed with the last several days, how quickly everything had happened. And I feel like I was trying to just, part of me was trying to be strong for the kids, and then the other part was trying to honor, those emotions that I was feeling and the love that I had for Baiey and how much I missed her already.
So tell me something. When you look back on your life with Baiey,
yes,
you allude to the spiritual nature, and I think when we talked about that, you meant the healing quality she seemed to possess.
Yes.
And express, with your children. And you did say that, so I wanted to know what some of the moments you remember most. But also, I am curious about how she helped you get through a divorce. So are you okay talking about that?
Yes, I'm comfortable speaking about that. When I think about during that process of going through a divorce and how painful it can be, and how those moments of sadness and despair at some points when a marriage breaks up, it's very hard. And Baiey, for me, was by my side through all of it, and she would come and sleep in the room, and she just gave me so much comfort. And I always felt, like I mentioned before, like living alone as a woman with children, like I always felt safe with her. I felt like Baiey gave me comfort and safety, and she sort of healed me in the way that she was my first dog.
Yes.
And so she fulfilled a lot of, she filled in lots of parts of my heart that were
That's a nice way of putting
missing.
it. A nice way of putting it.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of loneliness at a divorce and things like that.
Yeah.
That's always a mixed bag, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, we're going to segue into some good news.
Yes. Some very good news.
And I want you to, because before we end, I want you to talk about your new dog.
Yes. So we, as a family, decided that we were ready to get another dog. And we did have a little bit of conflict there at first because we didn't want to feel like we were replacing Baiey. And I think that was a concern, like, oh, Baiey, no one could ever replace Baiey. And but I did some work with a therapist, and she helped me see something in a way that I didn't think of before, and it touched me so much. And she told me that your children have so much love to give another animal, and you're not replacing Baiey, you're honoring Baiey with all of this love that your family has to give a new animal.
That's wonderful. And what a wonderful way to look at it.
Yes, it really opened my eyes and allowed me to be open to the idea of it's okay to bring another pet into the family, another dog, because it's going to bring us so much joy. So we decided to take a road trip back out to the same SPCA that we got Baiey from.
Okay.
And we said, we're just going to look, but you know how that goes. And so we went there on a Sunday, and we got there pretty close to when they opened. And we went right back to the dog area. And we walked up and down, and my son and I, we had looked online. You can look at the animals beforehand just to see what's out there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so you can kind of see like, oh, maybe there's this
Is
kind
it
of
like a
dog.
live feed?
It's not a live feed, but they'll take, they'll
Photos.
display a photo and they'll write a little personality description. Yeah. And we had actually seen the dog that we had adopted, but we weren't sure if he was still there. So we walked up and down the little area, and it was very tough for me, though. I have to tell you, I was crying a lot of the time. It was very tough because I was still so raw from Baiey. It had only been 3 weeks.
I can imagine.
It had only been 3 weeks. It was tough. But the first dog that we all saw was Buddy, and he just caught our eye right when we got there, and we knew that we wanted to go, find out more about Buddy.
Well, describe him for us.
Well, Buddy, so he is...
What caught your eye?
Well, he has these very large eyes. So his very large eyes caught our eye. But he just seemed very well behaved. I can't explain. Like, he didn't seem like he was,
jumping all over the place.
Yeah, I mean, he was eager because he was in the shelter, but he just had a sort of presence to him that we all were sort of drawn to. So we asked.
He had good karma.
Yeah. So we asked if we could, see him and go learn more about Buddy. And so we went back into this room, and they give you the breakdown of, his health and how long he'd been at the shelter, and if he had any behavioral issues or medical needs, or, the whole rundown. And so Buddy was about 4.5 years old, and we weren't sure how many owners he'd had, but the last owner gave us some information about him, and we wanted to know why Buddy was dropped off at the shelter, because if he had some, aggression or, something like that, we needed to make sure that maybe, we might need to find a different dog. But I guess his big issue was that he was marking in the house.
Barking in the house?
Marking. Marking his territory.
Marking, yeah.
So we were like, well,
so he wasn't neutered?
He was neutered.
Okay.
So we weren't really sure, the length of what that meant, but that was that's the only information that we had. So, and he'd been there about 10 or 11 days. So we said, all right, well, let's go visit with him anyway. So we brought him out into this grassy area, and he was just so friendly and just so cute, and he was, he could follow commands too. He was very smart. He had energy, but he wasn't, running all over like crazy. We did see another dog that was kind of like a Marley dog, Marley and me dog. That was kind of wild. But
so what kind of dog is Buddy?
So Buddy is a boxer, and we think he's mixed with a beagle.
Okay.
So he weighs about 50 pounds. So going back to the little visit, we were all in a little area outside. The children and I had, visited with him, and the kids were like, "Mom, is this our dog?" And I was like, "Gosh, I'm not sure." So I said to myself, I said, kind of internally, I said, "God, just give me a sign that this is our dog." And he didn't miss a beat. He put his paw right on my shoulder.
Did he?
After I said that. And I thought, well, okay, this is the sign. This is our dog.
That's a pretty big sign.
This is a pretty loud sign.
Yeah.
And then there was another sign that, in the area where you could talk to the caregivers about the dog, there was a big sign in the window that said, "Do you need a buddy?" And the dog's name is Buddy. So we just took it to be kind of meant to be.
It's very synchronistic.
Yes. So we brought him home. And it's been a very healing experience having him as a new member of the family. And we're still learning about him, but from what we were told about him, he was the dog that they would bring into the groups at the SPCA, where other dogs were a little bit nervous or shy or hesitant, and he would be the one that would play with the other dogs and could calm them down. So he already had this kind of healing quality to him
He
with
sure
other dogs.
did. Talk about a spiritual nature.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
So we feel very lucky, and he's been such a great dog, and often we ask ourselves, like, who would let go of this dog? He's just wonderful. But then we also count our blessings and go, well, thank you to whoever let go of their dog, because now that gave us the opportunity to bring him into our
And
life.
it doesn't sound like he's done any marking around your
No,
house.
we've had a few incidents, and we've worked with a wonderful dog trainer named Erica, and what we figured out is it's more a separation anxiety thing, you know. So we've been working on that, and we've been learning, more crate training with him, and he's responding really well to it. So things are looking
It's such
up.
a wonderful story.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're
Thank you
welcome.
so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
How did you enjoy this?
I did. I enjoyed very much speaking
Yeah.
to you and sharing my experience.
Yeah, well, my listeners can't see you, but I see you smiling a lot now.
Yes.
And it's a great smile.
Oh, thank
And
you.
I'm very glad that you're here.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me.
Okay.
I'm very flattered.
Okay. So I'm not going to, so we'll talk again. Keep me updated about, buddy. I've got the pictures. I've got everything I need. And I think it's going to be a great show. And I'm delighted that you brought your heart and soul into here, and we can witness your life with these dogs. It's just wonderful.
You. Thank you, Belva, for having me.
Okay. Well, listen, I have to thank UPS at Second and Second. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Joe, for all you do for the neighborhood and for all the services you provide for everybody. I'm appreciating it. UPS store, Second and Second South in St. Pete, Florida, and a full-service UPS store. So thank you very much. We're going to go off the air, but first we're going to listen to Neil with our theme song. You're on, Neil.
Let's talk about life. Let's have a little conversation.
52 minutes.
Let's talk about life.
By the time he's too done.
Let's talk about life. And let's talk about love.